Winter's got its icy grip on Charlotte, North Carolina, but things are about to warm up in my workshop, which is my garage. A kind Facebook follower gifted me 2 pieces of her father's furniture and asked me to give them new life. So in today's video, we're tackling this desk with a unique twist. We're using both paint and stain to give it a total makeover. Well, hey guys, yep, that's me. Let's get started. Whenever I'm getting started on a piece, I always remove the hardware and any hardware that's located on the piece, and on this, it was right here on the drawers and also on the toes of the legs. The smartest way to store all of your hardware is with the screws that originally came with the pulls, because these are actually really hard to find, and these are antique screws. So I screw them right back in and keep everything together before it's ready to be cleaned. Lowe's Home Improvement has some amazing products. This is where I get my canvas drop cloths. I got the biggest size and my 6 milliliter plastic. Now, I could have tackled this desk without taking it apart, but I decided to separate the top from the base. Why? Well, with my plan to use both paint and stain, this approach gives me a cleaner finish and a faster turnaround. I'm going to be able to do this in 3 days' time. Plus, it just made sense with this piece because you could see how it was screwed together. Speaking of making sense, check out my new work boots. They're from Ox, today's sponsor, and let me tell you, these boots are a game changer. More on that later. Oh, and before I forget, I had to switch out my usual drill bit for a flathead to handle these antique screws. Except I did not know that they were also glued on. If you're interested in any of the tools I'm using, you can find the links in the description below or check out the handy YouTube shopping tab. This is why it's always really good to check your products before you go to the store and not get what you need. I thought there was some in this. Well, guess what? It's frozen because I did not keep my garage at a proper temperature. So the only one I have to strip is this, and I don't love this at all, but I don't have time to go to the store. So we're gonna see if this is gonna work. I'm gonna cover it with saran wrap, but I'm just going to let it go all over here and coat it with a paintbrush and let it sit. Citrus strip's easy to work with. It just doesn't work as well as greenies and some of the other paint strippers. So it has a lovely orange smell, but I did a whole video on paint strippers and this was one of the ones I did not love. It really takes a lot of product to work. So we're gonna see. I don't think this varnish is that thick, so I'm hoping it doesn't take too much. Whenever I'm using an eco-friendly stripper, they typically dry out a little bit faster than normal and they have to sit on for longer. So when you apply a saran wrap coating over it, it helps it penetrate deeper. So I covered up my entire piece with the saran wrap and then moved on to work on the base. I used a cabinet and furniture cleaner to tackle every nook and cranny of the section that I'm going to paint. This removes any lingering waxes, dirt, or grime that's built up over the years, prepping the surface perfectly for sanding. Once it's dried out, I use my Surf Prep sander to give it a buff sand all over. I'm using the medium plus grit sponge. If you're hand sanding, then I like to use a 150 grit to buff sand if the wood is on the softer side, or a 120 if it's pretty tough. By the time I finished, it was time to take off the saran wrap just piece by piece so that I make sure that it doesn't dry out in case this takes a while. I use one of my Amazon delivery boxes usually for this residue, especially since this stuff is eco-friendly. It just goes in the box and then I let it sit for a little bit and then I throw it away. I'm using a angled scraper to scrape this off. Now I didn't have a smaller one and I kind of need one because it did not fit completely on the sides, as you'll see, but I used it to scrape off everything I could, and then I went back through with steel wool that's pretty rough to scrape off any excess. I was pretty thrilled at how much came off the top. With the bulk of the finish removed, I switched to my Green Easy finishing cleanser to tackle any remaining stain and varnish. Do not be shy with this stuff. The more you use, the better it works. Next, I use some finer steel wool to scrub away the softened varnish. A little elbow grease goes a long way here, and I should not have done arms at the gym this morning. I was absolutely wiped out by the end of the night. Then it's back to the finishing cleanser and a clean paper towel to wipe everything down. I moved from side to side and then I did the top. Before you even think about sanding, make sure that the surface is completely dry. This is crucial for a smooth and even finish. While that was drying, I switched gears and headed over to the desk base. This is where separating the piece really paid off. It allowed me to work on one section while the other was drying, saving me a ton of time. I like to clean my pieces twice, especially after sanding. You don't have to, but I find that it helps primer and paint adhere better. This time I used warm water and TSP, that's trisodium phosphate. You can find it in the paint aisle at Lowe's for just a few bucks. It usually comes in a red and white box, and it's typically near the cleaning supplies, but sometimes it's near the paint too. TSP is an amazing product for deglossing furniture and getting it prepped for primer. For the desktop, I used my trusty Surf Prep Orbital sander. It is a real workhorse. Sadly, my 3x4 sander would not fit on the sides, so I had to tackle those by hand, which is a huge bummer. On the top, I started with 120 grit sandpaper, followed by a wipe down with mineral spirits, then I moved up to 150 grit, and finally 180 grit to get it perfectly smooth and ready for stain. The reason why you want to use mineral spirits in between, and you should use a lighter coat than I did right there, is because it helps get all the wood particles out of the crevices so that you're not grinding those in when you're sanding the next coat. It's going to allow you to get a much more even stain when you go to apply it. The sides needed a bit more attention, so I started with a coarser 80 to 100 grit sandpaper to remove some of the deeper damage. Then I gradually worked my way up through 120, 150, and finally 180 grit for a silky, smooth finish that's ready to receive stain. Now for the sides, I used these sanding blocks. I have had them for years. It is a very inexpensive kit that I found on Amazon. They are wonderful grips that you can put sandpaper over, and a lot of them, especially the one that I've linked, comes with sandpaper that fits over it, and that's what I was able to use to get into these cracks and crevices outside of hand sanding. When I was really happy with how it was sanded, and this was after hours of hand sanding, my arms are literally dead. I gave it another bath with mineral spirits just to see how it would look stained and determine what color. I chose a darker color for this because the wood was going to pull to a dark color as it was, and I knew that it was going to pair well with the color that I picked for the base. The reason why I chose a gel stain and a darker finish at that is, as you can see while I'm wiping it down with these mineral spirits, there's different kinds of grain and different types of wood that have different colors that come out, and so if I was to go with a lighter color, I would have just seen a lot of variation, and that's not the look that I was going for. So I used a gel stain because it's a really great product to get everything even without having to get into the really complicated Mohawk toners and tone the wood so that it would match. For this project, I'm going with Varathane's Premium Gel Stain in Dark Walnut. Now, I've always loved Varathane and general finishes too, but this one's a little bit easier on the wallet. I was all out of my usual staining sponges, so I had to improvise a little bit. I just grabbed an old microfiber cloth and worked that stain all over the desk, and even used a brush to really get into the tricky corners. Now, inside of this drawer, it was looking pretty rough and it was mostly raw unfinished wood, but gel stain is amazing for that. No need to even sand it down. It needed a little love too, and so I used it all around the edges and the inside. After that, you do need to seal it with polyurethane. A few minutes later, I wiped it all back with a paper towel and it was done. While that dried, I changed my focus to work on the base. After letting it dry, I wanted to make sure that every bit of dust was cleared from the surface, so I used a tack cloth to wipe it down one more time. This is a very sticky cloth, make sure you wear gloves. The primer I'm using is white shellac. It's not typically supposed to be sprayed. It does have a flash point, so please use caution when using it in a sprayer. I'm working in an open area and I have a fire blanket nearby, so I am taking on the risk, but I do use a sprayer when I apply shellac because it goes on so smooth and gives a great finish. I keep it in a HomeRite sprayer always, as this one is one of the cheaper sprayers out there and it sprays shellac really well. To prevent bleed through thoroughly, you want to let it dry overnight, so this is a great time for me to tell you about my new work boots, as these are today's sponsor. If you've been looking for a work boot that's as tough as nails but comfy as your favorite sneakers, you have to check these out. These are the Ox work boots and they're seriously packed with features. First off, safety first. These bad boys have a steel toe with extra TPU protection, so I know my feet are safe. When I'm working with big heavy pieces of furniture, I have accidentally dropped it on my toes before, and oh my gosh, in regular old tennis shoes, it kills. But these are unpenetrable. They're rated for electrical hazard protection, but the thing that blew me away is that they're actually comfortable. I can put inserts in them if I want, I've got room, but they've got this oiled leather and mesh design that's both water resistant and breathable, and I tested that out because I took them up to Asheville this past weekend and walked through snow and sleet, and my feet, after over a mile of walking in a snowy trail, were completely dry and warm. They've also got the incredible zippered side that I'm sure you saw, so I can just slip them on and slip them off whenever I'm entering my workspace. The other aspect that I like about them that I really need for my garage is they have Kevlar midsole that protects against punctures. These were gifted to me from Ox and I cannot thank them enough. I've never had work boots before and these are a game changer. They come with a 6-month guarantee, so you cannot go wrong. Their link is located in the description below. All right, so I'm starting with Sherwin-Williams HGTV Home Cabinet and Furniture Paint. I got this made in tricorn black. Normally I'd go with a General Finishes milk paint on this. However, I have been more interested in using cabinet and furniture paint because it does have a seal coat in it for really good durability. Now, you do need to coat this stuff with polyacrylic sealer, just like you do with any furniture paint, but this you don't. And so I picked this up when I was at Lowe's this morning. So we're gonna paint the base of this desk. I am using my fine detail finish. You can get quite a few of these and then hook them up to your Flexio gun system. So I've got the Flexio 5000. This is what it hooks up to on this end. This plugs in over here, this plugs in here, and then they've got the big old one inside for like paint and stains. And I don't even think I've ever used this, but yeah, this is the big gun that it comes with. And then it's got the big filter in there. And it's just powerful. It's gonna help this run through. So we're gonna see if this thick paint runs through. Let's get to spraying. This is your adjuster right here. Move it up, opens the flow. This sprays here. All right, I did not like the spray pattern on the wall over here. It is too thick. This stuff says do not thin. However, you thin it with a little bit of purified water, it's gonna come out of your sprayer better. Because if you don't have an airless sprayer with like a huge system behind it, like it's gonna be too thick to come out. So what I'm gonna do is, now that it's pulled it up here, you need to pull back the trigger to get it to drain a little bit. There we go. So we're draining some of this stuff out. And that needs to be purified water. You don't want tap water because there could be some minerals and stuff in it. And yes, you could measure this, but I've been doing this quite a bit, so I'm gonna put about that much. And you just wanna get it to where it's running off your stir stick. It was not running off before, but I was like, you know what, let me just try it without thinning. But then this is what you get on your piece. That's not good. You don't want that. So we're gonna thin it a little bit. And because it says clean up with soap and water, I know that this is water soluble. So therefore you can mix water into it to get it to go through your spray gun. You do not want to overwater it because then it can be like super drippy. But we wanna mix this very thoroughly. And then we're gonna hook it back up. All right, this is much better. Having it run off like that. You want it to run like a sealer. Let's spray it up. Polyurethane? Mineral spirits. This is the thinning potential of it. See how gross that is? The best part about the Flexio system is that I can have one canister filled with polyurethane and one canister filled with paint, and because they are being attached to the gun as a unit, I can go back and forth between the pieces to make sure that I give everything solid coats. I gave it 2 coats of paint, and then with the polyurethane, I did give it 3 light coats of polyurethane. This second coat right here was a little bit too thick, and so I did go over it with a 320 grit sandpaper after it dried, just to knock off a little bit of the ripples, and then I gave it one final thin coat and it looked perfect. I used Barkeeper's Friend and some warm water to clean up the hardware. I did have to scrub it pretty good with steel wool and then my scrubber brush, but then after you let it dry for a bit, it even lightens them more. So these looked so gorgeous after they dried, but I did give them a coat of metallic gold just to make them pop. Okay, this is after 3 hours. Look at that coat. Oh my gosh, one coat of that, and it's gorgeous. Look at that coverage over white. Gorgeous. 2 coats, spots like that. I did my final coats of polyurethane. You can absolutely use a paintbrush for this, though you might get a few fuzzies. The upside is that you can lay it on a bit thicker, so you'll need fewer coats. Just keep some tweezers handy to snag any stray hairs or fuzz before they dry. Speaking of polyurethane, I know some of you are scared to put that stuff in your paint sprayer, but don't worry, I've got you covered. Next week, I'm dropping a whole video on how to clean out your sprayer so you can go back and forth between paint and poly without any problems. Are you guys ready for the big reveal? Here's what we started with, and here is what it is now. This gorgeous piece is going out to Jacqueline from my Facebook group. It was her father's desk, and I am so happy that we could give it a new life and a beautiful finish. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this furniture flipping journey. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, it's completely free. And check out the description box below for links to everything you need to tackle this project yourself. I have a whole list of other videos for all my Amazon products that I get to review and all my furniture flips. The only thing I have left to do is list this on Facebook Marketplace. What price would this go for in your area? Drop a comment below, make sure to leave me some love, and I will see you guys next week.